What's up, guys? Episode 42 of the Midwest Angler Podcast. Scott Sturman, Matt Deitch, you know the drill. Matt, first episode of October, and it is finally starting to feel like fall.
That it is. It was about like 40-some degrees today, rain all day. I mean, we had to have at least a couple inches of rain.
Yeah, definitely. I noticed the retention pond across the road has got a lot of water sitting in it, and yeah, like you say, I think in 3-4 days here, the high is like 55 degrees or something.
Right.
Water temperature is going to be dropping.
Yeah,
Fall fishing is going to be taking off.
It's going to go in and go down there in a hurry, and they're going to put the feed bags on and they're going to start going. So now's the time of year to get out there and do it. I know like a lot of the hunting seasons are opening up and there's other things going on, but if you want to catch one of your bigger fish of the year, maybe a new personal best, now's the time to get out there and give it a shot.
We going to Mille Lacs this weekend?
If somebody wants to invite us, we are.
All I'm saying is after this AOI tournament...
I want to go catch big brown smallmouth.
I think I got a free weekend, so maybe we'll give it a shot. No, but yeah, we'll talk about that later in the episode. But first, we've got an interview with Andrew Gullickson, owner of BeaverTail Bait. And if you're hearing BeaverTail Bait and you're wondering what that is, that's exactly what it sounds like. It is BeaverTail Bait, the meat of the beaver tail. He cuts it up and he sells it, and they use it for bait as a substitute for waxworms. And I've got to say, I've personally used it. It's really a pretty cool deal.
Yeah, it's going to be fun to hear about the process of it and just all about it.
Yeah, definitely one of the more unique baits there is out there, and yeah, I can't wait to hear about it. So we're going to get right over to him. Hey, Andrew, you there, man?
Yep, I'm here, guys. How are you tonight?
I'm doing pretty good.
Very good. So, yeah. Andrew, you own BeaverTail Baits. Tell us, tell the listeners what BeaverTail Baits is.
BeaverTail Bait. So we're not that clever. It is actually BeaverTail. I tried for a while to come up with something else, and every time I'd refer to it, it just came back to BeaverTail, and the name has stuck, and we've run with it. But it's a company my dad and I founded. I think we've been running about 3.5 years now. Really been serious the last few years, and it's just a bait to replace waxworms, and kind of similar to the pork idea that Uncle Josh used to do, with a few different quirks and kinks to it. But yeah, that's kind of the beginning of it. The idea for it, which came about actually in the 80s, and I was born in 87, but and it's been used forever. I think trappers have been trying, beaver tail instead of trying to find waxworms in the winter. They've been using it, but in the 80s, my dad was fishing alongside a longline trapper and basically getting his butt kicked, and asked the guy, as any good fisherman would, "What the heck you using?" And of course, he comes back beaver tail. My dad said, "Okay, yeah, sure, okay, don't tell me." And after they both pulled off the water at the same time, and she's like, "Okay, really? So what you using?" He showed him. It was beaver tail, and it is something you can cut up a piece of beaver tail and use it, but it's often tough to find a piece of beaver tail. We found a lot of challenges in trying to keep it fresh without doing anything to it, and it goes stale really, really quickly, and it is a pain in the butt to cut. So that's where we came in. Been working. We kind of had it just as an idea. It was one of those crazy ideas my dad had, as he invents things all the time, and as a kid I didn't think it was cool enough and wasn't sure it would work, and let him beat me fishing with it for about 10 years before I'm like, you know what, this stuff is pretty cool. I think this would sell, because it sure is nice for not having to use waxworms. So
it's a pretty tough meat. I've used it, and to put it on the hook, it's definitely not like a waxworm, but yeah, it's a strong meat. It really stays on there.
Yeah, I always say, like, if you're a dad and you got kids, or mom out fishing and you've got kids, it is absolutely a lifesaver because you get it on there and you're using it all day. I know Darren Jones, who you guys had on, I think, a couple weeks ago.
Yep.
Darren pro staff stuff for me, and I had him do a clicker count, and I think he had 55 bluegills on one piece last fall.
Holy. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That makes a huge difference.
Yep, that's taking a beating.
So that's a tub of waxworms.
Yeah,
it really is.
Yeah. So we've had a lot of fun working with it and trying to make new shapes and working with it as a new company and trying to find a way to make it quickly and make shapes that you guys can use is part of our new struggle, I guess, as a growing business. But
absolutely,
it's been a lot of fun.
Now, how do you source your beavers? Where do you get your beavers? Are you guys trappers? Is there a fur company up there that you guys buy them from?
Glad you asked that. That is one of my top couple questions I get asked. We get them a little bit of all over. My dad does trap. I used to. I've got a couple kids now and a day job, so I just don't get a lot of time to do it anymore. But my dad traps and my uncle trap, and they're both big in Wisconsin, the Wisconsin Trappers Association. And I've kind of let the word out a little bit, and with fur prices the way they are, we're willing to pay a buck or two a tail. There's a lot of people that just want to use that tail, and I've been really surprised at how many people are willing, out there that want to sell them. So that's the main way. We do sometimes buy from fur buyers and stuff that they'll buy the beaver in the round, and they'll have the tail and they'll sell them to us. But I really prefer to give the guys on the ground, give back to them as much as I can. They're the ones doing the work.
Right.
So.
Yeah. So tell us about the process of getting the beaver tails, and what do you all do there to create the bait?
Well, yeah. So it's actually a work in progress. Where you got to get the tail. You got to keep them frozen. We're working on a way to slice them up and punch them and preserve them. And really kind of the secret, which you're not lucky enough to get the whole secret from me, but the secret, the secret to the whole process, and what I often will call our secret blend herbs and spices, is our preservative and getting that piece preserved. Because like I said, you can take a beaver tail and shave a piece off. There was even a YouTuber, Scott Mackner, that did it last year, and he did it, and he did quite well in his video. But what I find is that it gets to like a hard yellow rind within a couple hours. I'd cut up a bunch in the morning. This is what happened back when I started using it. I cut up a bunch in the morning, and I'd go to change it at noon, and most of it was garbage. And if it got real cold or if it got dry, it dries out really fast, and then the oils in there just don't come out anymore, and it becomes an issue. So we found, I've got a cousin who's a chemist, and he kind of clued us in on some ways to preserve it. And as long as you stick it back in that liquid in the bag, it's oftentimes we fish with one piece for multiple outings if we want to.
So it's kind of similar to a gulp, as far as that. That process of you put it back in, you got to put it back in the bag, otherwise it will dry out type thing. Not saying it's it is gulp, but just
it's
similar.
It's kind of that same thing. If you leave it out, it will it'll dry up like gulp will. That's a good way to put it. And it won't. Sometimes gulp you can get back with water. Ours you can't. But as long as you put it back in the bag, you're good to go for quite a while.
Right.
So tell us.
Go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, I usually use stuff that's a couple years old that I just can't, I want to make sure I give my customers the best stuff. So I use, 2-year-old beaver tail out of the back of the fridge. So.
How much meat is actually on a tail? Is there a bone in the tail? I've never.
Yeah.
I've never. I used to do some raccoon trapping, but I've never actually trapped a beaver. So I think about a beaver tail, and I think about, just a big leathery piece, and I imagine there's got to be some meat in there, but is there bones? What is there?
Yeah, there's a thick bone, and then there's a lot of this, like, surrounding that tail, there's a lot of this, like, sinewy material that I suppose makes their tail so strong, and they can use it as rudder and swim, but it's almost too hard you can barely cut it with a knife. So that takes up a bunch of the tail, and then you've got the leather on the outside. So there's a good bit of meat on a tail, but there's a lot of work to get to it, to be quite honest.
Now, how many little pieces of bait do you get out of a tail?
I'm going to keep it at quite, well, actually, I don't even have to do that. It really, really varies. It all, it kind of depends on the size of the tail. Spring beavers, obviously, I don't get that many. Sometimes only like 15, well, not 15 pieces, but like 100 pieces or less than 10 bags out of a tail, all the way up to some super giants. I might get 150 bags out of a single tail.
Oh, wow.
But it so much depends on how much fat that beaver's got, that sort of thing.
Right on. What's like the shelf life on something like on your product, or as long as you keep it in the liquid, it should, in the bag sealed, it's pretty good, last long time?
Yeah, that's another big question I get. If you keep it in the liquid and don't expose it to either really, really hot or really, really cold, it'll last a couple of years.
Right. A lot longer than waxworms.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you so, like, the big thing, I've had a couple people tell me it was really squishy and it fell off right away. Now it's a couple people out of thousands, and I think it got, like, in shipping or something, it froze.
Oh, all right.
So if it freezes hard, like, I've had a bag sit on the ice all day and I've used it and it's still good and firm, but if you stick it in the freezer or leave it in your truck at 15 below for a couple nights, sometimes it's just like a lot of meat. It kind of comes out squishy.
Right.
It's still a work, but it's not going to be that durability that we preach, and that is one really big key, like we've talked about, is that it's super durable. And kind of the under the radar thing that, unless you've seen us at the shows, or I'm trying to highlight more in videos this year, that doesn't get talked about as much, as it's got just amazing action, because it's mostly fat and it's got oil in it, so it's neutrally buoyant. So I'll have people hold a rod dead still in a fish tank, and you can literally see heartbeats in it because it moves so easily.
Wow.
It's nice.
Yeah, it's really got a special action.
So how was the product first received when you first decided that you were going to start selling BeaverTail as bait?
Yeah.
And you started telling some people, and maybe up there in Wisconsin, like you said, other people kind of knew about it. But when you show up to your first show, or when you go to your first bait shop and try to sell it to them, did people kind of give you a blank look, or how was it received?
Yeah, it's a bit of it's a product that takes a little bit of explaining, because when you just go up to somebody and say, "Hey, I've got BeaverTail Bait," they're like, "Okay, so what? What is that?" And it took a little bit to get in, and actually Wisconsin, it was kind of a hard area. It took me a little bit of time and a few calls to get in to a couple shops around here. The place where I really got my start was actually North Dakota.
Really?
Yeah, I kind of skipped over that part a little bit earlier so my dad figured out what it was and fished with it. Well, he knew about it, but it was until he was on a trip, one of those trips where you're just not catching anything. He was in Devil's Lake, North Dakota. It was in the early 90s when it was really slamming out there, and it was one of those where you're just willing to throw the tackle box down there and yell, "You choose." And that's kind of what he did. He had brought a piece of beaver with him, and he shaved off a couple pieces, and they went from nobody catching anything to, if you believe my dad's story, the Perch Patrol was following them around. So Anyway, so out there, it just has a kind of a special touch because often you're fishing so deep that you need that durability, and perch absolutely love it. Um, so that, yeah. So that's kind of where it got in pretty easy. I had one guy kind of take a chance on me out there and do a decent size order, and it's really grown out that way. Now you guys are South Dakota, right?
We're right on the border of South Dakota,
Okay.
Iowa, and Minnesota. We're in the far northwest corner of Iowa.
Okay. Is that more bluegill country out that way?
Yeah.
A lot of our lakes have bluegill in them. Spirit Lake here, there's been a pretty good perch population this year, but they don't really get real big. I mean, you might catch a 12, 13 incher every once in a while, but most of the time they're in that 10 to 12 inch range.
We try to do a couple trips up to Lake Ponset every year, and
Yeah,
you
up
know,
into
so we
South
do get
Dakota.
into South
Okay.
Dakota.
Yeah. Yeah, I always say, so bluegills can be so fussy that it's the type of thing that can work well with them sometimes to finish them, but some days they're off to everything. Some days I'll admit as the owner, once in a while, some days you got to go to a waxworm.
Yep.
Right, yeah.
But sometimes you have to go the other way and go to a beaver tail too. Whereas crappies and perch, I've just had an overwhelming response with they just prefer it. They prefer beaver tail, I should say.
Right.
10 out of 10. So, but yeah. Anyways, back to your question. So, yeah, it took a little while. The first show, I got a lot of people like really giving me some weird looks when I said, looking at BeaverTail Bait, what the heck is it? And just trying to get past that, show people what it is, and I always say it's the type of product takes about 15 seconds to kind of understand and click into even what we're showing you.
Right.
So
Now, how many different products do you have? You've got some different sizes, some different colors.
yeah, we've got a pink and a white panfish bite, which is about 3/4 of an inch by an 1/8 inch. And then we do have our log jammers, we call them. They're a pike strip. And those, if anybody's familiar with us before, there's going to be probably a second type of those this year. So there'll be the pike strip, which often will even have a little bit of bone in it. It's we make it more rigid so you can hang it off a tip up. And then our stuff kind of surprisingly took off with the lake trout guys up north.
Really?
So, and they don't like the bone in there though, because they got to be able to put a hook right in the middle. So for those guys, I'm going to just kind of make it just a little bit different, but approximately the same size, about 5-6 inches long, 1 to 3/4 of an inch to 1.5 inches tall.
Yeah. And you talked about like catching multiple fish on one. That is huge when you're talking about perch fishing.
Yeah.
You want to get that bait down there as fast as you can. You don't want to be fumbling around and trying to put new waxworms or any other bait on there.
Yep.
You can just unhook that fish and get it back down there as fast as you can before that school moves out.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's the key with it. Just fishing, you're fishing more.
Right.
In those, the lakes with mud flats 30, 40 feet deep, you miss a fish with a waxy, you have to reel up instantly to put some, just to check and see if it's on there.
Yep.
Right.
With beaver tail, I don't even look.
Yep.
It's there. It's either there. Once in a great while, you can get one to kind of work off, but it's way less than you would have to deal with a minnow head, which are notoriously bad, or a waxworm.
Now, what are some of the biggest learning curves that you've had to deal with starting a small business in the fishing industry? Not necessarily just with BeaverTail, but just starting a small business in the fishing industry.
Probably some of the big things have just been trying to find ways to packaging. Actually, is probably the biggest surprise. Trying to find the right package and work with the advertising and logo stuff. I thought that would be a little bit easier, and it's been a little bit tough. And then one of the surprises actually has been how welcoming the fishing industry is, and I'm sure there has been maybe one or two bad experiences with different personalities and people within it, but most people are really willing to work with you. That's been really that's been like I said, surprising.
I think me and Matt can attest for that too. Doing this podcast, when we first started and wanted to start doing interviews, we have been turned down by a couple people, but really, I mean, overwhelmingly more people have said, yeah, sure, I'll give that a shot.
Yeah.
And I don't know, that is cool about the fishing community.
Yeah, I think, and I don't know if you guys have ever heard of it or not, but I've been doing the Fishing Careers Workshop up in Brainerd. The Linders put it on. And that was just a great opportunity. That's part of how I kind of got the courage to really get this out there and market it a little bit better, was going to that. And all those guys are basically, I think they're doing it for free or for not much, and they're some of the biggest leaders in the industry, and they're more than willing to come up to anybody there and tell them a lot of their secrets and how to make it. So everybody wants to do it, so it's a really tough area to break into, especially if you want to try and make it a full-time living.
Yeah, for sure.
Now, you said you were from up in Wisconsin. Where are you from in Wisconsin?
I'm originally from Chippewa Falls. Yep. So which is
Did you say
northwest.
chip waffles? Just kidding, man.
Yeah, I always joke it's if you're not from there, you call it Chippewa Falls, and you put Ewa in there, a third syllable, and if you're from there, it's Chippewa Falls or Chip Waffles.
No, home of the Line and Kugels Brewing Company. I'm sure all the listeners that hear Chippewa Falls, they're like, hey, I know something that's from there.
Yep.
Now,
Yep, indeed.
Now, how did you get started into fishing?
It's like if you ask, somebody who's religious, oftentimes you hear the answer that I was kind of born into it, whether it's Christianity or whatever. And I was kind of, in a way, born into fishing. When I was 3 weeks old, I got into my dad's musky baits, and I still have a hook-shaped scar on my hand from it. I just started fishing when I was a couple months old, and my dad loved to fish, and he gave me the opportunity and let me throw some poles in the water, and do all that and have the patience to take me out, and then fished pretty hard all the time while I was a kid. Actually kind of got away from it when I was in high school. Friends and sports took over for a little bit, but then my senior year of high school kind of went straight back to fishing all the time and haven't looked back.
I think everyone kind of goes through that when you get into high school and girls, and you get a car and
get busy with stuff, and
Yep.
But it all kind of leads back.
Yep.
Yeah, for a little while, I'm sure it became kind of something I had to do with that. Not that I got to, but
right.
Man, now as a dad, I cherish every moment I get to get out on the water.
Yeah.
Between the business and work and everything else. So.
Now, like, where are some of your favorite spots to fish, and like some of your favorite species to target?
I am a bluegill guy. I love them. I love to bass fish too, open water.
Yeah.
That's probably my two favorites, the two that I get to do the most too, especially smallmouth. And then through the ice, I've just got a special place in my heart for Devil's Lake. I try and get out there at least once a year and get those great big perch. And the northerns out there are kind of the untold story. There's
they're
phenomenal
some big
pike
Really?
fishing.
I didn't know that.
Oh, it just my best trip for 6 hours straight. We had a flag an average of every 7 minutes, and our average fish was like 33 inches.
Wow.
So
it's kind of a workout program too. I mean, you can you get your running into the flags and the heavy lifting with the northerns, and that's one of my favorite places. Otherwise, I love Northwest Wisconsin. The
the kind of the Blue Hills area, I guess you'd call it, from Big Shatak down to Chip Waffles. That area's got a lot of diversity and a ton of lakes. It's something. I now live in southeast Wisconsin. That's something I kind of took for granted, was just how many lakes I had right in my back door.
Yeah. Now, you're an aquatic ecologist, correct?
Yes. Yep.
Now, tell us, what that entails, and where'd you go to school for something like that?
Yeah, I went to UW Stevens Point for a fisheries degree. I got my bachelor's in fisheries management, and so my job now as an aquatic ecologist. Basically, it's kind of private sector DNR work in a way. So I do a lot of everything from fisheries management, lake and pond management. We do weed and algae control. Basically, if you have water and don't have the DNR managing it, you call us to work on it. So it's a really, really diverse job. I do everything from aeration maintenance and fish stocking to fish shocking and killing weeds or planting, depending on the situation. So, it's kind of a neat deal.
In a lot of private ponds, then.
Yeah, private ponds. We do work on a lot of some public lakes as far as like invasive control, and surveys for invasive species, but mostly private ponds, or up here we have private lakes that we do a lot of that on.
Got any wild stories from doing anything like that? Any crazy fish pulled out or anything like that?
Nothing too nuts, but it is interesting. Up here, at least, people with private ponds kind of tend to think of them as a fish stunting factory. They're not super productive like a lot of farm ponds or anything. Up here, they're a little bit, they're thought of as small fish, but we've got one customer that feeds his fish really well and just is on a pretty good management program, and he's got 3-year-old hybrid bluegills that are pushing 11 inches.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
I've got a picture of 4 of them that go like 42 inches total. So
Jeez.
So you get to go out there and feed them some BeaverTail Bait every once in a while?
I'm hoping.
Nice.
Picking some ears.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, before we let you go, if we've got any listeners out there that want to buy some of this BeaverTail Bait and give it a try, where do they find it?
So beavertailbait.com is always available. And then you can get it on Facebook on our BeaverTail Bait page. Sometimes the shipping there, just because of the way Facebook works, is a little bit slower. If you are around you guys by any chance, Spirit Lake, I believe Stan's Bait and Tackle has it. And then I think it's actually the east part of the state, but Hanks in Iowa has it as well.
Okay.
Otherwise you can look up vendors on our Facebook page. And you can always just message me right on Facebook through BeaverTail Bait or Andrew Gullickson. Either way, it goes right to me. So,
Are you going to be at any of the ice shows this coming few months, or no plans for that?
Yeah, I'm gonna be at St. Paul at the big one. I was, in the future, I really want to get out to like the Dakota Angler and
Yeah.
a couple of those other ones. We had a little bit of family illness setbacks this year, so we weren't able to get enough produced for those. But definitely love meeting everybody at the St. Paul show, and anybody that's out there using it or trying it. I always say I want to see your pictures. You tell me you're catching them on there. I love, I have to pay for advertising for people to take pictures. I'd much rather have real people out there catching them and sending them to me. And that really, as a bait manufacturer, there's nothing that like keeps you cutting bait in the middle of the night, trying to keep up with things like somebody sending you in a 15-inch crappie that they caught on BeaverTail Bait.
Yeah.
So
Very cool.
That's what it's all about.
You bet. Well, unless you got something else for us, if we didn't ask a question about the bait, if you've got anything else that you want to tell the listeners.
The only thing I would say is, after a few years of doing this, the only negative feedback seems to be people that go right from a waxy and they try BeaverTail Bait, and they try and fish it just like a waxy, and it is closer to a waxy than a lot of plastic is, but you still generally need to put a little bit more motion into it and maybe trim it down from what's in the package depending on the situation. Play with it a little bit and give it a shot, and I think you'll love it, and I think it'll really save you a lot of dead waxworms and keep you fishing longer.
Right on.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I'm looking forward to giving it a shot this winter. I used it, I think, last year out on Lake Pahoja, jigging for bluegills. That's a little local lake right down by us. And then I think we got into a pretty good bass bite, and I think we quit doing the pan fishing. But no, I'm definitely looking forward to trying to give it a shot on the ice.
Awesome. Last thing I'll say is keep an eye out on our Facebook page, because I am announcing some new colors and styles this year. So that'll be coming out as well.
Perfect.
Awesome.
Perfect. Well, yeah, like I said, we really appreciate you swinging in and chatting with us. And, yeah, if you ever make it down to the Ice Institute, Dakota Angler Ice Institute, hit us up. We live pretty close to there, and we'd be happy to talk with you. Maybe we'll see you up at St. Paul.
I hope so.
Perfect. Well, thanks a lot, man.
Yep, thanks.
Thanks, guys.
See ya.
Mr. Andrew Gullickson from BeaverTail Bait. It's pretty cool hearing that process of how he makes the bait.
Very cool. Very cool. And it was also cool to get somebody from up in Wisconsin.
Yeah, we got the Wisconsinite people in there listening up. We never did ask him if he was a Badger guy, though.
We didn't. Well, this isn't the year to be asking somebody
No.
if they're a Badger guy and try to flex that you're an Iowa Hawkeye guy.
No,
because
that defense is playing pretty tough.
Yeah,
So
I don't know that they're
We're
going to
not
lose
gonna
a
go
game
there.
for quite a while. So, yeah, no, very cool.
yeah, it's nice having him on the show, that he was able to get some free time and talk with us about the BeaverTail Bait. Like you said, yeah, I haven't got a chance to use it yet. You had some last year, and Darren Jones, past guest, he uses it quite a bit. It seems like he is pretty active with it on social media, and got to give it a try this winter.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously going to have the natural meat flavor that fish are interested in. And, when it's got durability like that, and then he also talked about the action with it being, pretty buoyant in the water.
Right.
And yeah, I would really like to get it out on West Okoboji in that clear water and see how it performs against those finicky bluegills.
Yeah, for sure. And, and like he said, too, I mean, some days they just want different things, and they don't see that a whole lot over there, so it might be something that really triggers them and turns them on. And
Right.
and the fact that the thing I like about it is you can catch multiple fish on one bait, and we've had it before where you get a nice waxworm on there. It's like, oh, nice and straight. You got it just how you want it. You drop it down there, and all of a sudden, thunk, they just pull it right off there, and you got to reel it back up and put another one on.
Yep, you're a lot more of a plastics guy, and I've been trying to get more into plastics, but I'm really always a waxworm guy. But I think this kind of blends both of them in together. It is live bait, you could say, because it did come off of a live animal per se. But it's got the toughness, probably more tough than plastic, and yeah, just definitely something.
Kind of the best of both worlds, really. When
really,
you think
that's kind of
about
what I
it.
was thinking.
Yeah.
We've got to. You get comfortable with, like for me, black check eye jig and a waxworm, but you got to start expanding out of your comfort zones and figuring out what works and what doesn't, and it makes you a better fisherman too.
Yeah, you got to try different techniques and different baits, that's for sure, and because you never know what you're going to stumble upon. And I mean, every year it seems like, no matter if it's open water or ice fishing season, there always seems to be like one jig or one bait or something like that just seems to outproduce more than others. Then you always kind of forget about this other thing that you use too, and all of a sudden you go back and you start thinking about it. It's like, man, that used to be my go-to and I don't use it as much. Well, because you tried something different and this started to work, maybe outproduce that other thing, but now you can use that other one if you want, or you can use this if you want. Now you've just made yourself more of a versatile fisherman.
Yep. Thinking about it, I would have really liked to have had them last couple days on late ice when we were out there getting them crappies and whatnot. That would have been an awesome bait for that.
Yeah, for sure. It would have. I was thinking the same thing when he was talking.
But, yeah, anyways, from Wisconsin over to Minnesota, our dog, Seth Fighter, with the win in the AOI tournament today. He didn't win the Angler of the Year, but the AOI tournament.
Yeah, he won the tournament like
That's
he did a few years
AOI
ago.
tournaments, yeah.
A few years ago on up on Mille Lacs, again, another smallmouth fishery. One of these years, they said it at the weigh-in, Mercer said it, one of these years they're going to have to do a 4-day tournament on one of these bodies of water so we can get to the Century Club with smallmouth.
Oh, he'd have done it.
He would have done it. I mean, he had 26 pounds today, and he quit an hour early.
Yeah.
He said he got Corey Johnston over to where he was fishing and Gussie, and he said, all right, dudes, this is yours. I'm heading in early.
Yep. Gussie was over by him, and then I thought I heard him say on live, like, hey, I think Gussie's going over to get Chris Johnston. Or Corey Johnston.
Oh, it was Corey, not
Corey
Chris.
Johnston.
Corey Johnson.
And I'm like, what? And yeah, sure enough, you see Gussie take off, and pretty soon here comes Johnston back, and it's like they're just three buddies out there fishing.
Well, and they're all travel partners, so
right, all them Northerners, and like I think of obviously the Midwest. We're the Midwest angler. I don't know. I loop them Northern Canada guys
so
right on in with us,
especially when you start talking about the bass fishing world, because nobody down south thinks that the northern fishermen can catch fish, and it's awesome to see the year that those guys have all had down there. And I mean, even like on the FLW tour, there was a bunch of northern anglers, Austin Felix, Josh Douglas, those guys all performed great. The opens was Bob Downey from Minnesota.
Bob Downey, yep.
He won the Central Open just down in Oklahoma Grand Lake.
Yeah,
a couple weeks ago. So
there's a few of these Northerners that are qualified for the Elite Series, so we'll have to see if they take that invite or what. But.
So it's just really cool to see the influx of the northern fishermen doing so well with all that stuff.
Absolutely. We'll leave on this, but I thought the coolest thing when they asked Fighter what he was going to do in the off season, he was going to get his wife pregnant and go and shoot some greenhead mallards.
I know that he's a big duck hunter, and I think he's always posting pictures. I think they go out to like Montana or Wyoming or something out there every year and have a good duck hunt. And I think him and Josh Douglas do a lot of hunting with each other in the fall, and should try to get him down here to do some pheasant hunting sometime.
No doubt. That'd be way cool. With that, also, with that being the last tournament of the year, our Midwest Angler Podcast Fantasy Fishing League comes to an end. And we've got to mention him one time in episode. So.
Our FFAOY, our Fantasy Fishing Angler of the Year.
Our buddy Jeremy K comes in with the lead.
He gets the win.
Yeah, he edged out Matt by...
No, he edged out Eric.
Slab Game Rick. It was second. Eric.
Yep. Wow, Slab Game come in there. I swung for the fences this last one.
Everyone had Paul Mueller, who had a great showing, besides you, who had Jay Yellis. And yeah, when I looked at your lineup, I thought, yeah. But I know Colby Van Beek did have Seth Fighter, we thank everybody who did take part in that. Our buddy Dan T.
2 weeks in a row.
Yeah, he just falls off. Whatever. But no, Jeremy K.
Jeremy K. with the big W.
Eric, Matt, me. I came in fourth. You came in third. You had a pretty commanding lead over me. There was no way I was going to catch you. But Cody Nielsen, Colby Van Beek. We really did have a great group of guys, and
the last couple of tournaments, Stu the Noob,
I'm really looking forward to Stu next year because one thing about Stu, he's a very, very intelligent guy, and that he's going to spend this whole entire off season reading on anglers, and by next year he's going to know their birthdays.
Him and Jeremy are going to duke it out.
Yeah, that's good for Jeremy, because I know Jeremy does a lot of research too. That'll be a lot of fun next year. And if you're listening to this, I'm not kidding you. You
It's
don't
fun,
have to.
isn't it?
You don't have to be big into bass fishing. Like, I mean, you can be a walleye angler. You don't have to watch every single tournament. You go on there. They have pundits on there that you can kind of read through, and they kind of tell you who they think is going to win. And if you want to, go right on there. But you're going to get about 2-3 tournaments in, and you're going to get to know these anglers. They've all got personalities. Like, I'm truly depressed today that this is the end of the season. I really truly felt like I was a part of it. Like
the Bass Live, it's just the greatest thing there is.
It is. It's
and
fun.
to have this tournament, this 3-day tournament on a Sunday, start on a Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. I think they'd be smart to do more tournaments like that, or maybe go Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. I don't think a lot of people watch on Sundays.
They're busy out fishing and hunting themselves.
Exactly right. I think I think that sometimes that might help with, when some of these guys get into these tournaments, you're not contending with the local traffic and the local fishermen out there maybe getting into the community holes, and you might have less of a problem with it. I know the NWT, the National Walleye Tour, most of those are on like a Thursday, Friday.
Really?
Most of their tournaments are, and I don't know if it's because of that issue, or I think sometimes they do that so that if there is like a wind day or a storm day, they can go to that Sunday or that Saturday. It might be like a Friday, Saturday what they do, but I've thought about that in the past. With this Bass Live, most people are watching it at work the way it is. So
I'm just saying, across the bass fishing community today, production was not good at work.
No,
production was not good.
And I always have it playing on my computer in my office, and it's always kind of fun to, being a PE teacher, I'm out in the gym and I tell the kids to go get jerseys on for the game and everything, and pretty soon I'll go walk in there and they're all just sitting there just like, whoa, there's fishing on, and they're just all like kind of glued to it watching it, and they start asking a bunch of questions, and it's kind of fun just to see that stuff.
Yeah, I'm not quite the worker Jeremy K is, and I don't think that's any secret. So I kind of walk over to Jeremy every hour and kind of give him a little bit of an update. And, today when Fighters Bass Live or Bass Track was not updating, I'm like, Matt's texting me saying that Fighters throwing back 4.5, 5 pounders.
Yeah.
Like, he's got to have more than what Bass Track is showing. And then, but they said that the cameraman is the guy who enters in that Bass Track. Fighter was catching them on every cast.
Yeah, he didn't have
time.
And
he didn't want to put the camera down to enter it in.
Right.
So, oh my gosh, crazy.
And it's just fun watching that Bass Live, because just to see what those guys are doing, and I'll probably sleeping tonight. I'll be hearing that drag screaming from that spinning gear, and it was cool just to see them on this tournament, catching them on everything. The crankbait came big into play. The drop shot, like always on any smallmouth fishery, but just the different baits that they're using on the smallmouth or on the drop shot. So,
and don't be scared off if you're a walleye angler or whatever.
Not even if you're into fishing that much. I guarantee if you start doing this, you will get into it more than what you realize, because it is a fun thing.
It is. Like I said, the guys have personalities, and you just kind of you feel like you know them. It's a lot of fun.
It's easy. It's easier than any other fantasy sports, I feel. You don't have like preseason drafts, and this is who you're stuck with. You got to trade. Every tournament, you get to pick 5 new guys, and there's 5 different pools.
Yep.
And so then you just go in there, and it is all based on how they're doing in Angler of the Year points. And yeah, it was the Angler of the Year thing at the end was I wonder what would have happened if Canterbury wouldn't have won, because Blaylock and Johnston were tied.
Right.
I wonder if they would have went to like who won the most events, or who like had the highest. I don't know how they would have done that.
Yeah, because they originally kicked Stetson off the stage.
They had to run and go find him to get him back up there, and he came up like, well, what the heck's going? What the heck? And
I kind of felt bad for him there, but I really. And I don't want to spend 25 minutes talking about bass fishing here, because I know a lot of our listeners could give 2 rips less about bass fishing. But one thing about it, you look back, and Corey Johnston had that one day with that mishap with his boat, and lost track of time and didn't get back on time. Had that not happened,
He would've walked away
he
with
would
it.
have had a commanding lead on the angler of the
They
year.
talked to him about that on stage, and he's like, those things happen. I'm not worried about it. What happens, happens.
Yeah. Well, northern bassers, hell yeah. All right, well, we'll see you guys next week. Thanks for tuning in. See ya.